a millennial or a boomer a new trick. So quick background on myself. I always like to start it off talking about the failed internships that really kicked off what I refer to as my true entrepreneurial journey. It had to do with what I was studying at the time while still at FGCU in their hospitality program. Got myself 2 internships that were part of the curriculum, but unfortunately, both those internships, I was fired from both of those, to be completely transparent, and I am entirely okay with saying that because those 2 internships that I got fired from were both entirely learning lessons for me. Mistakes were made, messes were turned then messages to myself, right? And so I always just like to kick it off, just starting that, the journey without a doubt was far from pretty, and it even started with failure and with pure mistake and messes. So that's just the reality of, honestly, the true entrepreneurial journey. Shortly after that, things did turn around. Again, I like to think of those internships, getting fired from them, as the opportunity presenting itself to the right path. Shortly after that, I partnered with a good friend of mine, Brendan Kelly. Was still attending school at the time. I had coincidentally taken an intro to entrepreneurship class. So I began familiarizing myself with a lot of the basic structure and just the guarantees to starting a company. I know a lot of people, can argue you can't really quite teach entrepreneurship. It's really just expressing experience and expressing a foundation to it. But I had taken that class, and that's where I had been working with Brendan on it. And the first startup that I launched it's called VIX Entertainment. Launched that in 2017. It was an event and talent management company. So we started with merchandise, but quickly evolved into managing events. We would book artists at local venues, primarily in Sarasota, in the Tampa area, putting on a lot of different shows. Started managing a few artists, and we actually stumbled upon a contract with MTV. So we actually landed ourselves a contract with MTV, whereas we were the only brand, merchandise brand, only entertainment brand that could be worn on the cast members, just on the episodes. And to clarify what we were contracted for, it was a new reality TV show called Siesta Key, quote unquote reality, right? Up in Sarasota, up in the Siesta Key area. And there was a couple guys, actually, that's this picture right here. That's Brandon, that's Carson. Two cast members. Carson was a model. Brandon, he's a hip hop artist, and actually, you know what? That's Brendan there, my initial partner in the company, and so we launched it with merchandise, managed the few artists, had the contract with MTV, and it was a lot of fun. I always like to express that it was a lot of fun. Launching that company, navigating our way through the entertainment industry, meeting new artists, out from LA, all the way up to New York, down here in Florida. So just, being involved and engaged in the entertainment industry was tons of fun and a huge experience. Of course, or I should say, especially having that, I was still in school at the time. So it was tough to balance that. And we'll get into, obviously, just, what I learned from balancing all of this. But to take it even farther, actually, wasn't just starting my first company in the entertainment industry, and I wasn't just going to school. I actually got brought on by a social startup, small business at the time, called Where the Fund. Again, back in 2017, same time frame. And the purpose of that was to executively develop their company. So they were on the brink of bankruptcy. They were overstaffed, on the brink of bankruptcy, and they brought me in, and I essentially we did get rid of 2/3 of the staff, which was needed. Restructured their whole pricing structure. I took responsibility of the partnership portfolio, the nonprofit partnership portfolio, and I took responsibility of the whole sales portfolio. So I can kind of put a barrier between me and our CEO. So instead of the hundreds of customers, that were coming in, just, talking to our CEO, who, understandably so, might have been making some promises at the time. He was still kind of in that startup phase, and so kind of put that barrier up and took hold of the whole partnership and sales portfolio. And under my belt, we ended up bringing in a little over 1.25 million in sales. Doubled their partnership portfolio from about 40 nonprofits to 75 nonprofits, and restructured that entire sales structure. So again, huge experience, a lot of fun. I was very flexible, having to balance 20 hours of school, about 60, 70 hours at Where the Fund and 20 hours at my startup. So you do the math there. I mean, it was 80, 90, 100-hour weeks, as a 19, 20-year-old. And then I wasn't sleeping much, wasn't eating much. And a lot of that is the reason why I became so well balanced. Just to quickly build off my experience, I was the first student at FGCU School of Entrepreneurship, so I'm sure all of you are very well familiar with the School of Entrepreneurship. They're thriving now, doing some phenomenal things. Well, back in spring 2017, while I was working on Where the Fund and starting VIX Entertainment, I was communicating with the board of the new School of Entrepreneurship with the faculty that we're putting together, Dr. Kawanui, Annie Stout, and was it was just chatting with them, throughout the whole spring and summer term about the approval process of this degree. So when it got formalized, I was the first to enroll in it, but also the first to have actually been involved working on multiple companies. So definitely something I hold very close to me now that it's a program of 600 students, and it was voted the #1 undergraduate entrepreneur program in the state of Florida by Pearson and Entrepreneur Mag. So awesome there. And then Y Combinator Startup School, I went through that at the end of 2019. So great experience going through something that companies like Airbnb, Stripe, Reddit have been through Y Combinator. So great experience going through their startup school. Right now, to bring it up to speed, right now what I have going on, as many of you already know, I'm the co-founder of Fieldr. We actually have Carl even on this, hopefully he's still on here. He's one of our advisory board members. He's been, all of you have been, major roles in getting us to where we are now. Heavily involved with nonprofits. I sit on a few committees involved, including the Future Makers Coalition, Lee County High School Advisory Boards, NAF Academy for Collier County, LARC Incorporated nonprofit. So a few different committees, a lot of different volunteering, a lot of speaking for high school students, for college students, I'd say is my primary audience, actually, students. And just launched actually something called Motivating Travel. It's essentially, it's right now a for-profit organization, soon to be nonprofit, or we'll roll out a foundation for it. But essentially, we initiate and engage in environmental, cultural, and social initiatives. On the environmental side of things, we're pursuing the coral and reef restoration approach. We hope to be, when this all moves over, working on a few initiatives here in Southwest Florida for coral and marine life restoration. We have a partnership with the Coral Restoration Foundation. And then on the kind of social, cultural side of things, again, once this all smooths over, first stop is Kenya, Africa, on my mission trip that I've put together. I'll be traveling to different underdeveloped regions in the world, different countries in the world, and teaching or mentoring entrepreneurship, business, the use of tech and innovation in their communities. Really, all with the goal of their community, their civilians, having the resources and knowledge of either working on companies already established or starting their own companies in that community, so they stop, they always aren't leaving that undeveloped country, that they're retaining those locals, those civilians. So that's the goal with that. So hopefully, again, when this starts, when this all moves, once all moves over, we'll be able to continue pursuing that. Wrote my first book. That's super exciting. I was just telling you all about that, actually. It is set to publish Memorial Weekend, right before Memorial Weekend is my goal, and it's really it's a self-education book with the approach, a very raw, realistic approach of living a well-balanced life. So I'll be sure to send out a link to everyone when that does launch. A quick story behind Fieldr, we did incubate and run a beta at FGCU. And certainly something, obviously, I recommend just as a startup founder is putting that initial concept through some form of an incubator. Just talking with Alex, actually, before started giving this presentation, and it's exciting to hear that 239 will be having an incubator here in the end of the year. So huge fan of what they have to offer. But we're, again, very fortunate to incubate it and run beta trials at FGCU. We launched in August 2019, and with the help of Carl, again, on this call right now, I give him so much credit for it, and I always will give him a lot of credit for it. I made that really tough decision as as an early stage entrepreneur. Um, Having to balance, financially, what does it take to, to still sustain my life, right? To still keep the lights on, but ensure we know, where we ought to start generating revenue. So trying to balance that, making it a calculated decision is what I'm trying to say, a calculated leap of faith, not just an emotional or heartfelt, leap of faith. But it was certainly tough because at the job that I had quit, I was only there for 60 days. It was a different job from where the fun. It was actually at FGCU in their alumni office, and only 60 days of working into it, I came to the conclusion that with Fieldr launched, with the attention that it was seeing in the community, and the attention that I needed to give the company, I made that tough decision. But without a doubt, was one of the best decisions that I've ever made in my life, was quitting that full-time job, and again making it very calculated, knowing that I had X amount of runway. I was about 4 or 5, I think, capped at 6 months of saved, money saved up in the bank, or other forms of delayed payment coming in the door. But as far as any stable check coming in the mail or in direct deposit, that I knew that wasn't the case, and so I had to make that tough decision. But very glad I did, because it opened the door to just unlimited amount of possibilities that would not have been there if I kept my 40-hour-a-week attention at the other job. So again, thank you for that, Carl. And so that was October 2019. We launched then recently at the end of quarter one of this year. I know I didn't really get into the nitty gritty of Fieldr, because I know all of you already are, well aware of what Fieldr has to offer. But essentially, knowing that we launched in the higher education industry, serving college students. One of the biggest, I guess, more recent expansion or pivots that we've made is focusing on high school students. We've rolled out a new business model, new pricing model of licensing our software to school districts, who then disperse our service out to the high schools in that district. It's a much more scalable model. It's already a seemingly proven model, given that we landed our first real contract with the school district of Lee County. So that's where we, as a team, at Fieldr, have decided to commit our focus to. We'll keep our college portal live. We'll still have college students signing up, registering, and landing positions. But as far as our resources, our focus, we're going to commit that to the high school portals, to landing more contracts with more districts. So very excited about that. And in other recent news, we launched Fieldr Academy. It's essentially the educational segment to our company, to Fieldr. We wanted to bring in some additional value into what we have to offer, and that additional value being education. Education for recruiters, for hiring managers, education for students, whether that come through different professional etiquette, networking events, strength finding, resume building, a lot of that, different simple yet very effective tools, tactics, resources that we'll be offering to students and to employers. And to clarify, this Fieldr Academy launch has come via podcast. So we decided the most effective way to really get the word out, start branding Fieldr Academy, would be through a podcast. And so that was phase one, and we're already 8. I want to say we were recording our 8th episode this upcoming Friday. So 8 episodes, let's say 8 episodes in. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been a learning process in itself, but certainly one of the more proactive and effective things we've done during this whole lockdown, this whole quarantine time, knowing that and I'll kind of quote our advisory board here, knowing we have a world of tech savvy people with their laptop to their left, desktop in front of them, computer over there, phone right here, right? We're all surrounded by technology, and especially have been through these last 60 days and whatever it's been. And so we knew we had kind of that advantage. And so we launched Fieldr Academy, took advantage of that opportunity, and launched it by podcast. And for any of you who might not know, that's where you can find our website, fieldr.app. It's our main website. We are going through some functionality upgrades here soon, so you'll see a lot of changes made to the site. I always like to slip this in there. Paul Graham, Y Combinator founder. The most important quality in a startup founder is determination, right? So, one certain thing that I've learned as a startup founder, both just from previous companies, but especially with this current company with Fieldr, one of the biggest, qualities, one of the most effective qualities that I myself or my team can just carry as startup founders is the ability to persevere, to be determined and press through what we know are going to be extremely difficult, challenging times. It's going to be a very bumpy road. Again, I started this presentation off with the fact that I was fired from 2 internships. Might not be the same context of that, but in the context of failure and mistake, we highly expect that to happen as early stage startup founders and at a young age with not a ton of experience under our belt. So I always like to plug this quote in there because it just reminds us as entrepreneurs, as startup founders, that we truly, we don't need to be the most industry expert at what we're starting. Really, it's in that early stage. It truly comes down to that ability to persevere and remain determined through what is going to be challenging times. I'm gonna kind of press through these, at a high level. I can dig into each one of these honestly in an own presentation itself. I'm gonna refrain from doing that, and those of you who really know me, which is all of you, I can easily do that. I can easily get off on a tangent. So a few core leadership keynotes that I've learned in my experience, and from gathering just a ton of information from my advisory board, from mentors, just from the different programs, accelerator and incubator programs I've been through. Y Combinator is a huge one. Just all this kind of all that bundled up into what I've been able to learn. Let me just throw on my brightness a little bit more here. So first and foremost, there's no one single archetype, right? I've seen leaders, I've met leaders who are, even introverts, who may, be an extraordinary introvert at one time in their life, but, over time of whether it just be, attending a networking events or just, just getting started. I've certainly seen, individuals who carry that introvert personality still become leaders. And so everybody, or not everyone, people like to claim, oh, in order to be a leader, you must be, super outgoing, got to be extrovert. They're always this. That's not the case, right? There's really no one single archetype for a leader, right? They all come from different cultures, different backgrounds, different personality types. So that's certainly something I learned, and I always like to express, especially to the youth, the youthful generations, empower your strengths, right? Empower what your natural strengths are, and recognize what your weaknesses are, and that's a whole conversation we can have about delegation, but really being able to identify your true natural strengths, what you're good at, and applying that to your leadership ability. Leaders are always students, right? I've certainly learned from my higher uppers, my mentors, my advisors, who themselves, to this day, are always feeding me new books that they're reading, new podcasts that they're finding, right? So some of the greatest leaders that we all might look up to and might be influenced to, they are always students. They remain students their entire life. And just to clarify what I mean, doesn't mean they're going back and getting their MBA, their doctorate. They're always in a formal institution. They're just always filling themselves up with more and more knowledge, more resources, whether it be through books, blogs, YouTube videos, networking events, whatever it be. They're always just filling themselves up with more wisdom, more education. Lead with gratitude, right? That's something I'm definitely, experiencing and doing my best to right now, knowing I don't have, a massive audience. I mean, let's look at there's 8 people right now, right? There's not 50, 100, 3,000 people, whatever it be, but, still presenting, I still do my best to express that gratitude. And that's something I've seen work be very effective, no matter the size of the audience, of the support base that you might have as a leader or as a growing leader. Express that gratitude to those few people, to that support system that might not be the whole world. But in order to get to that point where you may feel as though, yeah, maybe, one day the whole world will be watching, but to get to that point, you need to be very, very thankful and express that gratitude to that support system from where you came from, the smaller support system, from where you came from. So always expressing that gratitude, no matter where the size is, I've learned can really take a leader a long way and really shape a leader. Now, almost not quite contradicting my concept of that there's no one single archetype, but there are a few fundamental attributes, like we've just discussed with the gratitude and being a student. There are certainly some fundamental attributes to leaders and to well-renowned leaders. And first of all, great leaders think and communicate clearly. I'm going to use a little analogy, a little story to elaborate on this one. Don't ask me what date it was, but President Woodrow Wilson was asked one time, how long does it take him to prepare his speeches? And his response was very strategic. His response was, well, if it's a 30-minute speech, I'm sorry, if it's a 10-minute speech, I need 2 weeks to prepare. If it's a 30-minute speech, I need 1 week to prepare. If I can talk for as long as I want, I can speak right now. I don't need any preparation. And what he was doing was understanding how long it takes him to best identify how to communicate that speech the most clearly, most effectively, in different segments of time. So, being a 10-minute speech, being much shorter than a lot of different presentations, he knew that he had to he had to first think, but then communicate that presentation, that keynote, that message, whatever he was giving as a president, express that in 10 minutes as effectively as he could if he had 30 minutes to present that, right? And so that's the whole concept of just always thinking and communicating clearly, and that's what really will shape a great leader. Great leaders are always, good judgment of people, and I don't mean that, like they like the street term, like, oh, this person's judging this person in a bad way. Not like that. Being able to identify one's strengths, one's weaknesses, what one can offer, what one can bring to the table as a staff member, as a potential co-founder, as a potential partner, investor, client, whatever it be, being able to be a good judge of that person to identify how, not just how you can benefit from that relationship, but how are they going to be able to benefit that relationship, and always ensuring that, it will be, that mutually beneficial, synergic relationship. So being a good judge of people has always definitely been an attribute to a strong leader. And then, of course, to bring it home, integrity and commitment, right? What's a founder? What's a company that doesn't even stand by its culture, that doesn't even stand by its core values? So having integrity for what that company's built on, for what you as a founder, as an entrepreneur, are built on, and then having commitment to that integrity, being committed to what you're staying true to on a very consistent basis. And to wrap up my points on leadership, leaders don't just motivate, they inspire. Somebody told me that not too long ago. I've always been one to advocate, motivation, 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 until I did realize, hey, motivation can be temporary, right? Some days we feel just super motivated to get up and just do something great that day, get the checklist all done. But then some days maybe we just don't feel motivated for whatever reason it be. And so, motivation certainly can be temporary, but when somebody is inspired to do something, whatever level that specific motivation might be at that day, that inspiration doesn't go anywhere, right? That inspiration will stay true each and every single day, day in and day out, whether it's a hard, difficult, a great day. Being inspired is really that long-term, commitment to a dream. So leaders that are able to inspire people, not just motivate them, that will make a great leader. Again, we'll keep this high level. My core balance notes, again, writing a book on living a well-balanced life. So I do like to think, over the years of doing a ton of different things at the same time, at different times, I like to feel I've identified a lot of messages and just keynotes and tactics to living a well-balanced life. And it first and foremost always begins with emotional intelligence and your fundamentals. So I'll start with emotional intelligence, your EQ. I can give you a textbook definition, but I'll give you my experiential, anecdotal, experience definition, and that is the fact that everything that we feel, experience, or that just happens to us always begins internally, right? Always begins with how we perceive, how we identify something, and we always try to blame the external on how we're feeling on the internal, when really it always just begins with how you're feeling internally. So one of the like kind of just assessments I always offer to some mentees that I work with is just when you're feeling different things, when you're feeling super happy, because you landed a contract, or something happened in the company, whatever it be, you're feeling extraordinarily happy that day, super proud, super fulfilled. I identify that and think, why am I feeling this way? Why does what just happened incite this feeling inside of me. And then vice versa, when something absolutely awful happens, you're having a terrible day, things are not going your way. Well, don't just identify what the things are. Identify internally why you are feeling that way, why what happened makes you feel like that inside, why it's making you feel that anger feeling, and to that volume of anger. And so just, I always like to express, being able to grasp hold of a strong, stable, emotional intelligence, internally, will certainly set the foundation for an entrepreneur, for a business owner, right from the get-go, to have that right mindset, and to have, those right set of stable emotions. And then followed by fundamentals. And there's three fundamentals I always like to express and to live by. Very simple. You're going to probably be like, duh, why are we even going over these? Sleep, nutrition, and love. Sleep, it's simple. I kind of crack at sometimes the posts on social media that are like, true entrepreneurs, true successful people only sleep 3 hours a night, only sleep 4 hours a night. They all they get is 5 hours a night for all of their lives. What is sleep? It's complete horse crap, like complete BS. I put myself kind of through that ringer of the years of sleeping 4 hours a night for years straight. Sometimes it's not even sleeping because we had a show the night before. And it deteriorates the health. It deteriorates your ability to consistently move and to consistently keep a well-balanced life. It's the complete opposite of well-balanced when you're sacrificing health because you're sacrificing your sleep. So I just always express to not lose focus on that simple fundamental of having the proper amount of sleep. And I'm a huge advocate for waking up early, right? But that just means then get to bed earlier than normal. And again, sounds so simple, but I myself and we all will be so surprised at how many people struggle because they lack that focus on that simple fundamental. Everything seems to be going wrong. They're not able to balance everything, and it just comes down to not having that ability to just shut the lights off and just have that well structured, healthy sleep schedule. And same goes for the nutrition, right? I remember when I was working on my first startup on VIX Entertainment, and Where the Fund and school. My first meal was 8 p.m. at night. My first drink of water, probably also 8 p.m. at night. I lost a lot of, and I know a lot of people don't experience that same extreme. That was very much extreme, where I was so focused, so laser focused on starting the company, on balancing everything, that I lost focus of just feeding myself, of just consistently eating, the proper nutrition. And I know a lot of people don't get to that extreme, but the other extreme that might be experienced is just what you're feeding yourself. Is, yeah, sure, you might be eating, maybe your meal wasn't 8 p.m. at night. Maybe you did have some food throughout the day, but what was that food, right? What kind of nutritional value were you actually offering yourself, and your body? And as entrepreneurs, knowing the challenge we're up against to start a company, having that stable nutritional, structure, schedule, is really going to make a world of a difference. And then third, for fundamental, is just love, right? And that goes for spending the quality time with your family, whether you have children, your significant other, friends, hanging out with those close friends. It's not entirely losing touch, not completely shutting them out. And then, of course, the biggest one, self-love. Always making sure that you're taking care of yourself on a daily basis, always, all the time. And taking care of yourself, that can also reflect into the nutrition, into the proper sleep. But self-care, self-love is something that we see it all too often entrepreneurs lose focus of. And then maybe it's not an immediate reciprocation, immediate consequence, but I like to say it happens 9.9 out of 10 times down the road, whether it's 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. Health, it will deteriorate, right? And your focus on yourself will deteriorate. So always retain that self-care, that self-love focus. So I'll start that there, and then we'll move through these very quickly, just for kind of time's sake. We all know this, that there's not one single path, nor even a few. Especially running a tech company, a software company. I've certainly come to find that there is not one single path to success. There's not one single path in order for us to achieve this product market fit, whatever it be. Got to go this way. It's got to be this way. Absolutely not. I've quickly learned, that there is a path, multiple paths for each, and unique one at that for each and every single one of us, right? And so always, remember that there is no one single path to that success, to that checkpoint, to that destination or goal you're trying to reach to, and there's not even a few of them, right? So know that you're on your own unique path, and just always remember that. And then similar concept to that is, we're all on our own time. I kind of have this, usually when I'm talking to a lot of students, I like to express this because, a lot of students, and this can go for anyone, obviously, this actually can go for anyone. We're always looking at the person that's maybe 5, 10, 20 years farther than we are, maybe not in age, but just in expertise in the industry. And I felt it too. I think we all feel it sometimes, almost not a guilt, but just, why am I not at that level? Like, why can't I get there? I want that. I wish I could be doing that, like that, whatever they're doing. And it can put a damper, on yourself sometimes. And I have a lot of people, come to me and say, well, this person is already doing this, like, should I just give up now? And it's like, no, absolutely not. Every single one of us is on our own time. And so leverage that. Know that you've created your own unique path, your own one single or few different unique paths. Own that, leverage that, and know that, whatever age you're at, whatever you're doing, whatever stage in your company you're at right now, compared to your competitors, compared to whoever it be you want to compare yourself to, first and foremost, don't compare, right? You'll be doing yourself a disservice. But just, yeah, know that you're on your own path and you're on your own time, right? And then the juggling rubber versus glass and the empty bucket concept. So these are two ideologies, two concepts that I always like to talk about. The juggling rubber versus glass. Well, this ideology was built off of a piece of advice that my mentor Carl gave me one time, and it was kind of a question. How many jugglers do you see or have you met that haven't dropped the ball? And it's in the context of balancing multiple things, right? We find ourselves in a juggling situation, many times over, whether it be for the company, for family, for X, Y, and Z. We find ourselves in juggling situations. Well, first and foremost, obviously always do your best not to end up in a juggling situation, which is very much more, it's a lot harder said, done than it is said. But knowing that we can expect to often, be put into these juggling situations or put ourselves into juggling situations, one of the best things that can be done is to have identified which balls of whatever I'm juggling, which are rubber and which are glass, which if I dropped in this juggling moment would bounce right back being rubber, and which if I dropped in this juggling moment would shatter completely at my feet because they're made of glass. So having identified, if you get in that juggling situation, know which ones are rubber, which ones are glass, because it will help you just be at least that much more effective or strategic in your juggling, right? And then the empty bucket concept, this relates to the fundamental of self-love. Let's all imagine each one of us, we have a bucket, right? We carry a bucket around with us every single place we go. And when we talk to somebody, when we offer advice, when we do this and that, we're taking from our bucket and we're giving to that person, right? We're giving out of our bucket to that person. Well, over time, if you consistently just keep giving and giving and giving out of that bucket, you're soon going to look down. You're going to look at that bucket and it's going to be completely empty because you're going to have given everything you've got. You're going to have given so much out of your bucket to people, which is a great thing to do. But then you're going to have an empty bucket. And if you're sitting there wondering, well, if I'm putting things in other people's bucket, Connor, aren't people putting stuff in my bucket too? We would hope so, right? We have faith that that's how it would work, but we can't always just give with expectation, right? We hear that a lot. Don't give with expectation. Will that be giving with expectation that you're giving? People are going to keep filling my bucket. Can't expect that. So you're wondering, who the heck fills that bucket? Yourself. Short answer is yourself. Always, always, always. Make sure daily you're consistently putting back into that bucket. So every time you're giving out of that bucket, you yourself are ensuring, you're guaranteeing that bucket's going to stay full of whatever it is, whatever context you want to use. That bucket's full of it, and you have plenty of it to give because you consistently put it in yourself. So I always love to express to that because I've seen that change people's lives, and I hope it can too for you, and because a lot of people feel guilty, focusing on themselves, prioritizing themselves. It's like, well, I don't want to be my only priority or my number one priority. You deserve to be. You deserve to be your number one priority. That doesn't mean there can't be other priorities in your life or other people as your priority, but you need to prioritize yourself consistently, or else you're going to drain. And again, especially in the context of an entrepreneur. And to wrap this up on the balance, accountability at all times. That's goes without saying. It sounds like what it is. Accountability at all times. There's a great book by the title of The Flight of the Buffalo, I will have to get you the author's names. James Blasco. Yeah, it just came to me. I think it's James Blasco, Flight of the Buffalo. And in it, he talks about the concept. I can't remember the exact question, but it's a question to pose to yourself as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a startup founder, what will more than likely eventually be an executive level position, or the CEO, whatever it be. When something goes wrong, right, in your office, in your company, you need to find a mirror, and you need to go to that mirror and ask the person who's standing across the mirror, why did this go wrong, and what can I do better? Not just to your employees, not to the staff, not to whoever you're working with, and just dumping the accountability, all the blame on them. Sure, things may have gone wrong, mistakes have been made on their account, on their responsibility, but at the end of the day, it was you who maybe didn't offer the proper training. It was you who didn't inform them with clear and effective communication. There could be a long list of reasons as to why it still will always, at the end of the day, come back to you as a startup founder, as the executive of the company, and oftentimes as a CEO. So accountability at all times. When something bad happens, find a mirror. Whoever's standing in front of that mirror, that's whose fault it is. Doesn't mean you need to beat yourself up over it. Don't beat yourself up over it. Take the accountability. And by taking accountability, it's a very healthy way of saying, I screwed up, or this happened, things screwed up, but that's not going to happen again, because I'm going to change this. I'm going to do this better. I'm going to do this differently. It offers you the ability to change, not just blame and just move forward. And then that mistake's going to going to be made again, because there was never an identification of at the end of the day, it comes down to yourself, and then you putting some course of action in place to ensure it doesn't happen again. So take accountability at all times. Suck it up. SMART goals. I actually have another tab pulled open in front of me. Make sure I don't forget them. SMART goals. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. I'm not going to dig into all of those. But just know, I encourage everyone, if you didn't already know about this, which it's been a well-renowned historical approach to setting goals. Look it up, Google it, familiarize yourself with it. But it's a very, very effective way of ensuring that the goals you set are exactly that. They're specific goals. They're measurable goals. They're actually attainable goals. They're relevant to what you're doing, to what your mission is. So you're not just doing random crap. And they're time-based. You actually put a time frame on when you're going to achieve that goal. So very strategic goals, and a very, very, very strategic way of living that well-balanced life. And to wrap it up, you're wondering, why do I just have a blank screen of Steve Jobs and his dates? First and foremost, I'm a huge fan of Steve Jobs, like massive fan of Steve Jobs. And I kind of remembered. Let's hope I can remember it now. It's a quote, small passage that he recited, when he was still around with us. But it goes like this, right? Let me clear it up. Here's to the crazy ones, the rebels, the troublemakers, the misfits, and the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but about the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. And while people may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius, because it's the crazy ones who think they can change the world that are the ones who do. And that's just to leave you with a little something from Steve Jobs, that, continue to be crazy, continue to have those wildly innovative ideas, continue to pursue the entrepreneurial path, take those risks, take those leaps, and just always, always remember, as Steve Jobs has put it, it's really the ones who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who actually end up doing it. So with that, I thank you, everyone who stayed around. Contact information is there. I'm sure you all already have it. A lot of you have my cell number even. And this is a quick preview of my book. Again, coming out Memorial Weekend 2020. So in a few weeks, I plan to publish it, and I plan to share the link with you all, and I will make sure we get copies in your hands. But again, thank you everyone for listening, for staying around.